All right, Higgsy, I might get you to take us away. We're nearly at 3 minutes past, so let's
Wonderful.
go.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kayla. So again, continuing on with our webinar series, my name is Andrew Higgs, Solution Architect for MOQ for Microsoft Collaboration and Unified Communications. I'm joined today with James Ware from Poly. Today we'll be going through some of the amazing and great features of calling and how you can integrate telephony into Teams, and also some of the features that are coming soon for the meetings platform, and James will be taking us through some of those endpoints that from Poly that you can enable and fit out your meeting spaces with to give you that rich and enhanced meeting experience on Microsoft Teams. So recap on as we start all of our webinars with, Microsoft Teams. What is it? What is it all about? Again, that single pane of glass application that you consume and access information. I always explain Microsoft Teams as being that application that is complementary to Outlook. You use Outlook for your mail, your contacts, your calendar, and so forth, and ultimately Microsoft Teams for everything else. It's your instant messaging, it's your meetings, it's the document collaboration, co-authoring on Office documents, as well as integration with third-party apps and ERP, CRM systems as well, and then extending Teams by allowing you to integrate Power Apps with the Microsoft Power Platform and the newly announced features around DataFlex. That's the name escaped me for a minute there. So the DataFlex DataFlex as well, so having that integrated into Teams, and of course bots and Power Virtual Agents. So again, Microsoft Teams is that single pane of glass for you to consume those services through. Ultimately, as they brand it, the hub for teamwork. So today we're talking about, as part of our life cycle of Teams, we're talking about the onboarding and extending of Teams. You've got Teams now deployed, and you're looking to implement some calling and meeting functionality. You've got Teams on the desktop, you're using it for IM and presence. You might be using it for document collaboration, using those the Teams and channel-based collaboration. Now you're looking to take it to the next step. How do we bring in our traditional phone system and bring it into Teams so that we can now start receiving our day-to-day phone calls in the Teams platform and migrate away from having those being tied to the desk, having the plastic on the desk there, and becoming a more mobile worker, allowing you to have your telephony to follow you as you move around. So when we talk about Teams Voice, you get to choose your own destiny. Ultimately, the technology that we call Teams Voice is direct routing. So direct routing is the bringing your existing telco or leveraging a hosted provider and to enable you to have telephony within Teams. And there's a couple of ways to do that. So you might have an existing SIP trunk with a telco, and that might be hooked up to an Avaya platform or a call manager platform or an old MyTel PBX, and you want to migrate away from that and start using Teams as your telephony platform. With the bring your own trunk model, you can ultimately deploy a session border controller either on-premise or in the cloud, and plumb that SBC into your existing phone system if it supports SIP. If it doesn't support SIP and you're still on ISDN and and your voice platform doesn't allow you to have SIP functionality, then obviously using ISDN to trunk that into an on-premise session border controller is the way to go there. So there's two deployment models, and each of them have their advantages for bringing your own trunk. So for example, if your strategy was to have a cloud-first approach and wanting to have no on-premise infrastructure to implement telephony into your Teams platform, then you look at potentially using Azure to host your session border controller. So we've partnered with a company called Ribbon, and you can deploy a virtual SBC in Azure and have that register to your trunk, your telco. So you can bring your own trunk and register it with that SBC and trunk that into Teams, allowing you to then make phone calls with a fully cloud-hosted solution. The Azure hosted solution overall has a lower capital expenditure than the other options that are available to you. And there is only a virtual option. There's no physical gateway that you can have Microsoft host for you. It's purely virtual. With an on-premise solution, you have a little bit more flexibility around how you control that core routing. So, for example, if you were looking to deploy Teams Voice and you had ultimately 5 or 6 pilot users that wanted to be the first cabs off the rank to use Teams Voice, then you had the ability to, at a gateway level, control those 6 people's calls to go to Teams, and all other calls keep them flowing through your existing phone system. You can also leverage some advantages around Active Directory-based routing. So, for example, you have a call come in, you could have the gateway do a lookup on Active Directory and say, "Oh, that user's home to Teams. I'll now send that call over to Teams." Or they don't have any attributes in Active Directory for Teams, so we'll send the call through to the legacy phone system. If you've got legacy services such as fax machines or emergency control points that require analog services, then an on-premise gateway might be a better option for you, as it could contain a FXO or FXS card to enable your those legacy endpoints. Alternatively, if you did go the cloud model, the Azure hosted model, you might require a analog SIP gateway to be deployed on-premise that can register to the cloud Azure SBC. The on-premise solution is internet dependent, so you require an internet service to get your trunk to register to Teams. And there's both physical and virtual options for you there. For a lot of customers that have Skype for Business already, you might already have a session border controller deployed on premise, and that could potentially be repurposed for Teams. So for the likes of ribbons, SBCs, 1000s, 2000s, audio codes, media 800s, and 1000 gateways, those are supported for Microsoft Teams and can be repurposed. So if you were looking to do a staged migration, you can deploy the trunking into Teams and then control you can control the actual migration by carving off the numbers that you want to migrate, or again, as I mentioned before, that Active Directory-based routing. The final solution that we'll talk about is a hosted solution. So with the likes of Over the Wire or M&F Enterprise, who we've partnered with, the hosted solutions are fully hosted Teams telephony service. So this is where you do not want to be responsible for any of the voice gateways and the core controls, ultimately leaving it up to the telco to host all that. So Over the Wire, aside from obviously providing the telco services, as with M&F, aside from providing you that telco service, they will also host that session border controller for you and trunk it into Teams. Over the Wire and M&F have different flavors of the way they do that, but ultimately give you the end result of allowing you to make phone calls within Teams without having to worry about whether or not the voice gateway is up. All you need to, it ultimately gives you a fully cloud solution and ultimately one bill that you'll be paying for. The key thing to note there is that the SLAs are managed by the provider and it's technically a managed service. It does reduce the capital expenditure over the other options, and there's upgrades, and obviously the upgrades are managed by the provider as well. So you don't need to worry about having to patch the voice gateways and so forth. So what do the solutions look like? So this is an example of what an Azure hosted session border controller solution would look like. For this organization, Contoso, we've got a Brisbane office, and they've got an existing via PBX that they're looking to migrate away from. And the mandatory components on this solution are the session border controller on the right-hand side there, and we've partnered with Vocus to provide the trunking services into those session border controllers. Again, you can bring your own trunk, but we if you were looking to look at what other options are there from a telco point of view, we're more than happy to obviously help you out with some of the Vocus solutions that we can provide. With the session border controller being deployed in Azure, there's also a Meraki VMX in there. That's not required. However, I've included it on this diagram for those customers that are considering looking at SD-WAN solutions. Having a VMX deployed in Azure would obviously enhance that SD-WAN experience, and you can actually register poly handsets to the virtual SBC should you need that. In the Office 365 platform, as I move left, we've got Microsoft Teams, and that's ultimately where the virtual SBC is registering to. And the Microsoft Teams users in the office or at home, wherever they're working from, are obviously communicating with Office 365 directly. On this diagram, I've included a SIP trunk from the Avaya PBX into the virtual SBC, allowing you to do some additional call flows. So, for example, if you are doing a stage migration and you still want to be able to deliver phone calls between your Teams users and your Avaya users and not send it out the SIP trunk, you can send it over the network. So the purpose of having that SIP trunk there is allowing you to have those short dials and extension-based dialing, calling between the Microsoft platform and the Avaya platform. Moving on to an on-premise solution. This is more aligned to how you traditionally deploy your phone systems, having that session border controller deployed in the data center. The Vocus SIP trunk is terminated on the SBC, and this SBC would live in either a data center or an on-premise office, and from there we trunk that into the Microsoft Teams platform. Recently, we've been able to provide media bypass, allowing you to keep that media traffic on the network, so that calls for the users in the office, those heavy packets, those heavy payloads, it's kept on the network. So it's flowing between the gateway at your data center or in the office and that user directly, and having just that SIP signaling traffic flowing from the voice gateway and into the Teams platform. I've also shown on here that you may still require that Avaya PBX, and you may decide to deploy the session border controller upstream from your Avaya PBX, allowing you to then implement that Active Directory-based call routing. So when a call comes in, it can do that lookup of going, is it a Teams user or is it an Avaya user, and sending it on. Again, I'm using Avaya as an example of a phone system here. You may still have a call manager solution or a legacy old Samsung analog PBX. It doesn't really matter what you've got, as long as they're in the solution. It may not be SIP, as I've got there. I've got a SIP trunk going from the session border controller into the Avaya platform. It could just be an ISDN connection if it's a really legacy or old phone system. As for the hosted solutions, so having a hosting provider, a telco, actually host that infrastructure for you. Again, this is probably the most simple solution to draw, because none of the infrastructure is on-premise for you. So again, you just need to worry about the headsets and the qualified voice devices and video devices in your network that are going to be supporting the Microsoft Teams solution. And as I mentioned before, James will be giving us a bit of a walkthrough of those a little bit later on. On this diagram, I'm still showing the Avaya IP PBX, and this diagram doesn't show necessarily the end state. This would be in the stage of migration. So ultimately, you could remove that Avaya PBX once all your voice services have been moved off the Avaya and onto the MNF platform. Usually, this is done with a port request. So you might have an existing telco servicing the Avaya platform and completing a port request from where it is now over to the MNF platform, and then rendering that Avaya platform unserviceable. So again, all of the PSTN carrier services are hosted with the provider. So if you had a over-the-wire solution, you would also have something similar. as you can see on this diagram, where they host that session border controller and then do the trunking into Office 365 as well. So again, having that one provider provide you the phone bill of hosting services for Teams telephony, as well as obviously carrier charges as well. It gives it it's a much more simple solution than having session border controllers in the cloud or on-prem. There is no preference over one over the other. It ultimately comes down to what your requirements are, and with regards to the actual porting of numbers, that can be seen as a bit of a scare for a lot of organizations and schools. And so that big bang approach to moving numbers away from an Avaya platform or legacy PBX platform over to a hosting solution might cause a few, might be too risky for some organizations. So having a SBC deployed on-prem or deployed in Azure might be a more palatable solution. So that way you can control the migration of the users and numbers across to Teams. So there's a lot of new functionality that's been recently announced as part of the partner conference last week with Microsoft Inspire. And there's a lot of information coming out about what some of the new features are for calling or telephony within Teams. So the new calling experience is coming, ultimately giving you a bit of a different layout of how you actually control calls within the Teams client. One-to-one PSTN call recording. So there is a number of partners out there. We've partnered with Mnemonics on call recording solutions, and that requires you to have an advanced communications license as part of your Office 365 subscription. So whilst you might already have E5 and you're looking to introduce call recording to your Microsoft Teams environment, you will require an advanced communication license on top of your existing E5 or E3 or E1 license. It's not part of the E5 licensing category. And then on top of that, the call recording platform license for that as well. Branch Office survivability. So those who've been along the journey on the Skype for Business story, you may have had survival branch appliances in your deployment before. This is somewhat similar, allowing you to have branch survivability should you lose your WAN connection or internet connection to Teams. This will give you the branch Office survivability, so it can operate as a phone system if it loses connection to Teams. Pop-out calling windows. So those who are familiar with the chat functionality now, you can now pop your chat out, and soon to be released, was currently in preview at the moment, is the meetings capability of popping those out. So this follows the same suit, that if you make a phone call, you can pop that call out of the Teams client and put it on a second monitor or have it separate and so forth. Call merge, so the ability to merge two calls together natively within the client. There's the ability to obviously do transfer and blind transfers, but being able to have two active calls and merge them together into a conference is a new functionality that's coming. Avaya and Nokia SBCs will also be certified for direct routing. About 2 to 3 months ago, they recently certified Cisco's Unified Call Manager. Communication Manager, apologies, and at a particular version that is certified now to provide that direct routing capability. Spam call blocking and reporting, pretty straightforward. Being able to block malicious calls or phones that are people calling you constantly, and being able to flag them for spam. Additional calling plans for countries. So those who live in a country where they have native calling plans delivered from Microsoft, there will obviously be more and more countries being added to that list. Music on hold and reverse number lookups, giving you the ability now to make a phone call, and if that number exists in your Active Directory, allowing you to type in a number and then automatically change that number into someone's name. So allowing you to actually do that, which is what they call reverse number lookup, and also music on hold as well. So music on hold has been out for a little while, but the music on hold has been delivered through the gateway, and as well as the native Skype for Business music on hold, which is also the same music on hold used in Teams as well. There's some improvements coming to that. And the core queue usage analytics. Something that's been requested a lot is the ability to get some detailed reporting on core queue usage and auto attendance. So currently today, it's a bit of a manual process, and third-party products would be required. But having in the core queue, core quality dashboard, and getting some analytics around the way that the number of calls and the abandonment rate and so forth associated with those core queues. One of the announcements last month was the large gallery view, so having up to 49 participants in your meeting. This is ultimately an enhancement on the 3x3 and moving up to 7x7 video feeds at a given time. This functionality can be trialed at the moment if your tenant has been supported under the options within your Teams client. Providing that it's been up on the latest version, you can simply check for updates. But check the options in there and see if you can preview the new meetings experience. The new meetings experience, again, as I mentioned before, gives you that pop out. But up the top of the, as you can see on the screen here, your meeting controls have been moved to the top, and you'll see there's 3 dots in the top right-hand corner. That allow you to click on them and then select, providing that there's more than 5 video feeds, you can start playing around with large gallery view and also the new together view as well. So together mode ultimately gives you a more visually appealing way of having a conference. It positions people within a virtual seat on a virtual background, and gives you that a more visually appealing view. The research was done that with so many online meetings taking place now, that video fatigue is a natural thing. Having to follow people around the screen, and it can get a little bit exhausting. What this does is ultimately similar to the way that background blur and the backgrounds, customized backgrounds work at the moment. Basically frames you and positions you on a random position on a seated background. It might be a stadium, or it might be if it's a 5-person meeting, it might be just be a desk, and you'll be sitting behind it. So together mode is ultimately to help reduce video fatigue and give you a more richer experience with a multi-party video. And one of the other final things that I'm really excited about is some new functionality to the Microsoft Teams room systems, specifically around guest join. So giving you the ability to join from a Microsoft Teams registered endpoint, the ability to join WebEx and Zoom meetings. So if I have in my organization a number of Microsoft Teams room systems deployed, I can walk in and press the join button on my touchscreen, and that will join the Teams meeting or Cisco meeting or a Zoom meeting. This was announced last week at Inspire, and it is now available on the most recent update of Microsoft Teams room systems, and just needs to be enabled through the endpoint. Only supported on supported devices. On supported devices only, should I say. So make sure that the latest version of code is acceptable on the Microsoft Teams room system that you're using. What I'll do now is I'll hand us over to James. James will be able to give us a update on the meeting room solutions and devices that you should be using with Microsoft Teams.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate your time this morning. I'm just going to take maybe 10 to 15 minutes to run through the latest and greatest around native, optimized, certified devices for Microsoft Teams. I'd like to start with this slide because it really just emphasizes the breadth and depth of devices that are now available for Teams. I think what you'll start to hear a lot more about in the coming weeks, months, quarter is going to be around the hybrid working style. And what we've seen is that transition to the home office, clearly because of COVID and that kind of forced working from home, to now scenarios where people are looking to come back to the office and ultimately anything in between. There's plenty of data out there right now, both in the US and we've done some studies locally as well, where in many organizations we're looking at permanently having between 30 and 40% of the entire working population working from home or a home office for more than 3 days a week. And so that just, when you look at this slide, it's really about us being able to select different devices for different working environments, be that at home, the home office, the different and changing working environments within the corporate enterprise, and anything in between as well, whether we're lucky enough to be able to go to a cafe and sit outside and take a call, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, very, very excited about the number of devices and things that we have. But if we look at some more, or if we focus in on some specifics as well and look at the Microsoft Teams room, we have two slightly different, I'm going to say, product families, which are part of the Microsoft solution set for Teams. Both are optimized and Microsoft certified family of devices, just running slightly different code. On the left-hand side, we've got the collaboration bar for Teams. Now, this is an all-in-one appliance. It's actually Android-based, but it's designed specifically for that huddle room, small meeting room, looking at simplicity in terms of being able to have a single device that you can just pop on top of an existing screen. You're up and running within minutes in terms of installation and things like that, and you've got a native Teams client. There's also options around having a touch control, and in the recommended scenarios for this, as said, like small to medium or huddle to small, and equally it's best with a touch screen as well for the optimized kind of user experience. That's on one side. Then we've also very recently announced our Poly MTR, which is the Microsoft Teams room. This is based around a Windows 10 compute, and then we add in different peripherals depending on the meeting room size. And so it might be for, well, it fits kind of all meeting room sizes from small, medium to large, and even kind of large, where we've got technologies like our Eagle Eye Director that's able to zoom in and frame individual faces and active speakers up to 11 meters away. That kind of covers all different options. As Andrew mentioned, you get these native features with these types of devices. Now, if we look at the next slide, I just have a conversation around some of the options that with a native device, so either the Collab Bar or Microsoft Teams Room, we're looking at devices now where we're able to develop the feature set as quickly as possible. And that really comes when it's Microsoft that are developing the application that sits on the Poly appliance. So you would have seen things like, it was only a few months ago that Microsoft Teams announced the 3x3 squares for the video, and then very quickly that kind of went up to 49. So you can just see the pace of development that's going on. And equally, by running the native device or the native application on our appliances, we're going to be able to match the kind of development that's going on within the Teams cloud platform with our appliances as well. And perhaps the most important thing about this as well is consistency of experience. So All of you that might be working from home now and using your Teams client on your laptop or your PC, once you're familiar with that and then you walk into a Teams meeting room, you're going to have a very similar or familiar user experience for yourselves. It's similar to that on the phone, on the PC, equally in the meeting room as well. And that drives familiarity. It helps drive adoption because people don't feel scared when they go into the room. They can say, oh, it's a Teams room. I can see my meeting. I know that I've got click to join. It's the same join button that I use on my PC, that kind of thing. So yeah, native is something that we're focused on more and more moving forward. Other kind of things that you get as well, and this is a great example of something that's available with the native Teams applications, is proximity join. Proximity join is becoming increasingly important in a kind of post or current COVID and potentially post-COVID as well, where the opportunity to just join from your personal device without actually having to touch anything or interact with the meeting room itself. So simply put, I can either walk into a room that's already booked, but I join from my my laptop or my mobile phone, and it actually acknowledges or recognizes that I'm in a Microsoft meeting room, and then it can join that appliance into my meeting. Or equally, maybe that I didn't book a room and I'm walking along the corridor, I see one of the huddle rooms that's available with Teams collab bar, and I can just walk in, start a meeting, and I can pull that meeting room in as well. So it is, proximity really is about kind of simplicity and ease of join, ease of use, that kind of thing. So let's look at a bit more detail in terms of the MTR setup. So we have the polycompute and the meeting room touch control. That's kind of our base build for any meeting room, that we need some compute to plug our peripherals into. And equally, we want some meeting control, which is a really nice looking, simple, small touch control that sits in the center of the room. And that's got that familiar Microsoft Teams room user interface on it. And then what we've done is we've put together some specific bundles based around the room size. So for small to medium, we're pairing the polycompute or the GT10 with our Studio USB. And we've got a great video coming up just showing you that amazing experience that you can have with the Studio USB. And then we go to large rooms as well, where we're pairing the GT10 with our Eagle Eye Director and our next generation of audio conferencing, the C60. For those of you who haven't seen the Eagle Eye Director 2, it is a phenomenal experience in the large room where we're able to zoom, optical zoom right into an individual who may be sitting right at the back of the room with that kind of just head and shoulder shot, but equally at the same time we can show the room view as well. So you can see the active person speaking, you can see what's kind of going on in the room around you as well. It really is a phenomenal experience. And at the moment we've got some amazing pricing on that bundle as well, for that type of experience in the large room. Equally for our existing customers, and also for anyone that is looking for a bit more customization, whilst those bundles may cover the majority of cases, we do have options for any certified Teams device or peripheral to be used in that MTR configuration as well. So for the tens of thousands of rooms out there that have some of our older trios perhaps running on Skype for Business, and they're looking to upgrade into Teams, we can take that trio and we can plug it into the MTR and use that as our audio device. There's equally thousands of rooms out there who have our 12 times USB camera, and that can be utilized in the new MTR room as well. So there's some great options for existing Poly customers, and equally those bundles, they are going to cover most cases, but there's some flexibility there in terms of the breadth of peripherals that we have for some different options moving forward. just in terms of video, and this is where I think we, with MOQ's experience around Teams and adoption of Teams and setting it all up correctly, this is where Poly comes in terms of differentiating ourselves, is around the experience that we offer in the room and or on the device. Now, going back to that kind of hybrid working style, I think what many of you may have experienced is with the initial changes with COVID, it was literally people were grabbing any device they could to be able to at least set up some kind of home office, some kind of working from a home scenario. And it was a situation where people were literally buying anything that they could, kind of almost like panic buying in terms of devices. Now with this hybrid working style, people are starting to see the different experiences on different devices that people are using day in and day out. And so moving forward, that quality of experience is going to become even more important, because it's not just that Friday afternoon meeting where it's okay because you're working from home for the 3 o'clock meeting. It's just a one-off, so it doesn't matter what device you have. It is literally Monday at 9 a.m. you're on video calls with your colleagues, or perhaps even more importantly with clients and partners and things like that, and that continues through the week. So people have that appreciation now of a quality headset or a quality video device, and that needs to be at home, equally in the office as well. So we have this amazing innovation both on personal devices and the meeting room scenarios as well, around things like speaker tracking, group framing, and something that's very unique to us called conversation mode, or perhaps at the moment is social distancing mode, as we like to call it. So if we jump to the next slide, we'll just show you a quick video where this just demonstrates the experience that we're offering, very unique to Poly in terms of the unique experience with the MTR, and this is our small to medium size offering. I think Andrew's just going to share it again with audio enabled.
Yep, I'm just got to make sure that we've got the audio enabled on this one. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second. It's not the one.
I always do that. Because we share it and we run through it to test it, and then when you share it for the next time, you just pop it up. Yeah. It's come up.
All right, here we go.
Let's take a look at Poly's next generation group framing and speaker tracking experiences that are part of Poly Meeting AI. So I've got group framing turned on one of our Poly solutions. Now I'm the only one in the room, so I'm the only one being seen. But once my colleagues Bob and Joe come into the space, then you'll see how the camera will automatically sense that and readjust its view to show all 3 of us at the same time. So now we've enabled speaker tracking. So even though Bob and Joe are still in the room with me, the camera's focused on me because I'm the one actively talking.
But when I begin to speak, the camera's going to make a quick cut to myself and put me right smack dab in the center of the screen.
And then if I start speaking, because I'm a bit closer to Bob, the camera's going to nice and gently ease up to me and frame me in the center.
So that's one really important point of this next generation experience, is it's changing different things in different ways depending on where people are located and the dynamics of the conversation. Like if I toss it back to Joe.
If I start speaking again from the other side, you'll notice that the system has recognized that Brian and I are in a conversation and has gone into conversation mode.
So it's got a lot more intelligence to understand the dynamics of the conversation and where people are, to always present the best view and change in the best way depending on what's going on. To learn more, visit us at poly.com.
Excellent.
Yeah, so for the occasional meeting, maybe just having a camera on a fixed view is kind of good enough. But nowadays, when we are always on video and the amount of video calls that we're on, that kind of experience, and you can see that innovation blending speaker tracking, great group framing, and all of that kind of stuff making a huge difference. So we also offer all sorts of innovation around audio as well. I won't go into too much detail. We've got videos on YouTube and online as well. If you want to know more, drop your ask in the chat, and I can post that. But it's all around noise block, so taking out the noise around us, both for the person who's using the device and equally for the people who are listening. I think maybe people were thinking distractions in the office were increasing with open plan, but that is nothing like the distractions that we're all experiencing now when we're working from home with kids being around or people mowing lawns or some things, just lots of hectic stuff going on in the background that I'm sure you're all seeing on many calls. So, but lots of innovation there to block all of that out. And then quickly, so the focus of today was around our meeting room solutions, but I just wanted to mention some of the audio devices and what we call kind of personal solutions as well. As I mentioned, we've got the brand new Trio. This was kind of our rock star for many years in the Skype for Business world. This has now been updated for a full next generation Teams experience. We've got handsets for those that are returning to the office and are looking at native desk type devices, and a range of native Teams handsets that are available. And then the next area is around headsets as well. This is probably one of the most sought after families at this point in time. And we have a range now of both optimized and certified. So the good news is for any of you who currently have a Plantronics, one of the older headsets that was certified for Skype for Business. These have now been recertified and will work with Teams, so you get investment protection there. But this is exciting around a whole new, adding to the existing family, but a range of devices that are now optimized for Teams. So things like the Teams button on the device that invokes the Teams application when and brings that application to the front of your screen, but core control around muting, around hang up and volume control and things like that, all making it a very familiar experience regardless of your location. You might be driving in the car and you've got a great device for that, or in a coffee blocking out the background noise, or more of that kind of working from home and perhaps using a device like I am today, but always sounding your best, whatever the working environment. So that's just a quick summary of the personal devices as well. As I said, really all about quality of experience and equally a breadth of devices for Microsoft Teams that's available today. Back to you, Andrew. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, James. That's absolutely fantastic. As you can see, yeah, there's a raft of devices there that are certified and supported with Microsoft Teams, and the meeting rooms can really enhance that Teams experience by having them video enabled. The next step for us is obviously to plan that journey for you to deliver you a Microsoft Teams assessment. A Microsoft Teams assessment ultimately is a way for us to help you charter your journey to Teams. You know, give you that strategy and planning, understand where you are and where you want to go, getting you from point A to point B, going and actually defining what that project scope looks like, and helping you getting you there. We are a ProSci certified organization, following Microsoft's methodology around change management and helping you structure that change for your organization. Moving on to then the adoption and readiness is making sure that you understand what information you want to bring across into Teams. So you might have an existing SharePoint deployment and looking to leverage Teams as a platform to consume that information. So migrating that data from on-prem up to Skype to SharePoint Online for it to be consumed through the Teams client. Understanding the adoption and driving that adoption and reporting on that adoption, so you understand how your organization is using Teams, and having that ongoing touch to understand that you might have a group of a body of people that aren't using Teams to its full potential. And then you can focus your internal trainings and material on helping them enrich that experience. Going through the onboarding and extending, as I mentioned earlier, Teams calling has a specific play there, as does the meetings as well. So being able to extend your organization to enable you with telephony and video conferencing solutions in the meeting room space. CRM and HR and IT processes, wrapping them up and creating those new business processes that can be leveraged through Microsoft Teams, empowering the Teams client with the use of bots, simplifying some of those business workflows by taking what you're doing today and how can you make that better by leveraging the Power Platform, by using, you might want to convert your existing SharePoint forms and create Power Apps, and leveraging the Power Platform and Power Automate to streamline those processes. So what we get out of a Teams assessment for you is a set number of projects or a high-level view of how you're going to get from point A to point B. And you might decide that you've already got Teams on the desktop. How do we take it to the next level? This is where we actually define what that next level looks like and help charter that journey for you. So the Microsoft Teams assessment is up to about 3 hours, give or take. It can be done around about 2 hours, depending on where you are in your journey. And ultimately, it's a free assessment with myself. I'll come in and meet with your CIOs, IT managers, change managers, SharePoint administrators, and help them understand what the capabilities are within Teams and what that future story looks like. Cool. That is it. Thank you very much, James, and thank you very much, everyone, for coming along and listening to our presentation. There'll definitely be more webinars coming up in this series of MOQ Teams webinars, so look out for those, and thank you very much for attending.